Good morning, I'm Terence Allmark. I'm the Business Development Manager at UKTelehealthcare. Thank you for joining today's event, the final event in our calendar for 2021. Today's event focuses on the analog digital transformation, and it follows on from the event we had in September. Today we've got 3 presentations followed by a panel discussion. The first 3 presentations are from Essence SmartCare, Apello and Telealarm. And that will be followed by a panel discussion on the All IP, the analog to digital. The 3 panelists, the 3 presenters will join panelists from NHSX, Farpoint, Text UK, and CSL, and also Legrand. During today's session, please put your questions to either the presenters or the panelists on the chat. And if you could please direct your questions to both the participants and attendees in this way, that all the questions will be seen by everybody attending today, and they'll all keep up to date with the flow of the conversation. If you want to share today's event, please use the UK Telehealthcare News and the hashtags. Today's event will be recorded. All the questions, presentations, and the event will be available on the UK Telehealthcare website. So I'd like to now kick off today's event, and I'd like to start with the first presentation. The first presentation will be given by Carl Ryan. Carl Ryan is the UK Sales Manager at Essence SmartCare. And Carl, if you could join me. Thank you, Carl. And if you could start your presentation, please.
No problem at all. Is that show okay?
Yes, if you could put it on presentation mode, please.
House.
Thank you very much, Carl.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Great to be back here talking at UK Telehealthcare. Been a while since we've been involved here. Really an honour to be back and involved. My name's Carl Ryan. I represent Essence SmartCare in the UK. Essence SmartCare are a worldwide manufacturer of text equipment. We operate all across the globe. We only supply text that is full end-to-end digital. Across our worldwide operations, we are now past 1 million connected digital devices. All of our equipment is digital only. We don't supply any hybrid equipment or any analog equipment. It's built from the bottom up as a digital product. Therefore, we're at the forefront of digital in all of the markets we work across. We use full end-to-end digital. Our Essence panel here, a few bits of technical bits apart, can be cellular or it can be IP plug-in. The cellular part of this is 2, 3, and 4G plus LTE. We can use VoLTE voice over LTE and also VoIP, which is included in every box that we provide. Essence themselves only provide what I call the bungalow end of the solution. So we don't have an affiliation with any call center organization or call center software. So we like to be agnostic into which call centers we can connect to. So we make the commitment that we will do all of the work to be able to connect to any digitally capable call center all across the world. If there's any work that needs to be done, any finessing, any matching to whatever the call center software organization or that organization's IT department, for instance, want to do in a particular way, we will make sure that the bungalow end, i.e. our kit that's provided, will match however the call center want to do that. That means that organisations are fully able to pick and choose which monitoring solution they wish to go for, with the support of Essence to make sure that that happens. So as you would expect, our units comply with all the full EN regulations. A couple of things on this slide that that stick out that are slightly different from what we do. So our RF range, so we use 869 megahertz everywhere. That range is extended to what you would expect from a traditional telecare system. Up to 900 meters we declare line of sight. So typically within a home, we can provide radio connections, radio sensors, anywhere up to kind of 300, 400, 500 meters away from the main hub. As well as providing this full digital solution, what we like to provide is that as part of our digital offering, we also offer extra value, extra functionality, extra sensors that are available through our digital offer. Not just that this is a digital product, it comes in a different box, but basically does the same as your analog product do. So what we do is provide a multi-service platform. So our main hub here can provide lots of different services. We include within the main hub all of your standard telecare, analog telecare functionality. So everything you can get from your existing systems, we can provide through Essence. But also on top of that, we include with that wellness and health as part of that same platform. So around wellness, we can do things such as activity monitoring to be able to provide graphs of patterns of movement, also to provide alerts around patterns of movement, also to try and then provide preventative services rather than truly reactionary, all through that same one hub and one platform. On top of this, we're also adding 2 layers of health monitoring on top, a full clinical health monitoring service, which I'll go on to talk about a little bit later, and also some softer touch health, things around sleep monitoring, around breathing rates, and I'll go on to talk about that again a little bit later. But the things as part of a standard telecare service that we can offer that comes from our innovation in digital products, I'll take you through a few of those now, if I may. So one of the first things is our what we call MD Sense. So the MD Sense sensor is full detection without wearables. So this sits in the corner of the room, similar to a PIR movement detector would now in the traditional telecare service. From sitting in the corner of the room, this MD Sense device will pick up falls without the end user having to have any wearable. It can work in conjunction with a wearable also, if that's preferable. Works in all situations. A maximum room size of 25 square meters, but also if you have larger rooms than that, you can use more than one sensor within that room. It has person identification, so it knows the difference between Mr. and Mrs. Smith within that room and can send the call through to the call center for that exact person. In this way, it's very good at where you've got people moving through the rooms that more than one person or more than a couple in that room, for instance, carers or grandkids or that kind of thing, to be able to pick up that it's only monitoring certain people within that room. It can be battery powered. It can be plugged in if you wish to. Sits in absolutely in the top corner of the room to be able to pick up those falls. Because it's constantly learning and it's not relying on the impact of a fall, such as a traditional fall detector would, it's very good at picking up falls from sitting on a sofa to slip off the front of the sofa, against walls and sliding down the walls, and being prostrate or lying in positions where you wouldn't normally do that. So it knows the difference between how you would normally lounge on the sofa to watch the TV, but also lounge a foot in front of the sofa, laying down where you've had a fall. It can pick up those slight differences to be a very accurate way of sensing falls. One of the other innovations that we've brought to the UK market, and I should say that everything I speak about here is currently available and our current product set. I'm not talking about any future inventions here. So this is our Care at Home communicator. This is a sensor that sits within a room and has voice recognition built within it. So any room that contains one of our communicators, if the resident picks up, has that cognitive ability at the moment of panic to be able to say emergency call, twice within 10 seconds, then this will put a call through to the system. This is a fully EN compatible telecare device. It works when you press the button 100% of the time, every time, not relying on Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or any of those kind of things. This is a fully compliant, certified EN device. You can also use this device for gaining two-way conversations in different rooms within the house. So if I place a call by pressing the button on this device, or from speaking the key phrase, the initial call that comes from the call center comes to whatever room this device is in. So bedroom, bathroom, garage, for instance, shed at the end of the garden. Remember that the radio range is bigger than you would be used to on a traditional telecare system. I can get two-way voice contact with the user at more places within the home. You can have up to 10 of these devices connected to the one main hub. These devices then, from the call center, it allows the call center then to hop between which room they're talking to, giving the call center, especially call centers that provide a response service, much better chance of getting that two-way conversation with the end user than they would do from a traditional telecare service. So if we talk about a little bit more about what we call our care at home system. So care at home is advanced activities of daily living, all built within your standard telecare box. One connection, one set of equipment. For instance, the movement detectors that you use to pick up activity in the morning or inactivity in the morning, or the door contact that you use for a property exit sensor is also picking up data that can be presented as part of a daily living activity graph. So these units can be set with rules to be able to say if such and such doesn't happen. So the way that my dad uses his, for instance, if he doesn't go out of the patio door in the morning, so his normal routine is he walks through the kitchen, goes out the patio door at the back of his house, has a cigarette on the bench. I'm not mentioning that. He asked me not to mention that. But also, if that doesn't happen, I get a text message in the morning to say, your dad hasn't used his normal routine. But also in a positive way, when it does happen, I get a text message to say your dad's up and about. You can use this to configure lots of different rules about how that person should live their life, get positive action and get negative alerts, should that be the case. Or you can just then program to track and trend over a number of weeks, a number of months, to see that people's pattern of behavior is as it should be. On top of that, the system is proactive in that way, reactive in that way, but is also preventative. So as well as setting rules, the system includes a full AI machine learning engine. And instead of sitting in front of my dad and asking him how many times, for instance, he uses the bathroom or on the night, he would generally say twice because he thinks that's the right answer. But also what this system does, it learns the pattern of behavior of my dad. So rather than setting rules over a progress of time, it learns what that normal pattern of behavior is for him, and it creates alerts around what is unusual in the past week, 2 weeks, not what I set the rule when the system was installed 6 months ago. So his patterns of behavior can change over time, both positive and negative. And the system will learn where to create alerts from the patterns of behavior that it tracks and notices throughout the day. So one of the things that's is new this year to Essence is what we call our VitalOn system. This is telehealth built within a telecare platform. So one set of equipment, one connection, one way of connecting to the call center. Our track and trend systems also include health. So we're in that situation where we can say, actually, this person's blood pressure has gone up over the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And in that time, they've had 2 more falls than they would have done in the past 6 weeks. So we're putting together social care and healthcare data to build a bigger picture of what's happening to those individuals. The system uses an auto pair process. It has remote configuration. It has out of home. So one of the devices you'll see here is a Bluetooth wristband. So that tracks things like resting heart rate, blood pressure, sleep monitoring, and that kind of thing. If you leave the house and you go for a walk to get the paper, for instance, When you return to the house, it will dump all of the information that's happened while it's been away into the box, which then gets reported within our suite of services to be able to continually monitor what's happening with end users. All of our software solutions, we can present all of the data within our platforms, whether that be healthcare or social care. But also on top of that, we run full open APIs. So if that data is useful in other places, we're quite happy to share all of that data for wherever it wishes to go. Full open APIs for anything that transactions that happen through the systems. It's really cutting edge ways of doing things. We are a manufacturer of all our equipment. Therefore, our specifications, services can change depending on our customer. All of our web-based applications can be branded to whoever they are. We don't necessarily want an Essence app, for instance. That can be whoever's app it wishes to be, whether that be local authority or other organizations. Because we deliver worldwide, we're also able to deliver lots of the solutions that we provide in several different languages. I think we're up to about 42 different languages in the solutions that we provide now. We also manufacture all of our equipment right down to all of the plastics, all of the cardboard we use for all of our packaging, and those again can be tailored to fit however our customer organizations, partnering organizations wish them to be. It's a full end-to-end manufacturing solution. Taking you through quite a lot of stuff there, I think, and there's lots more to come. 15 minutes is quick for me, Terence, but still lots to get through there. Hopefully there'll be lots of questions. Always happy to get contact from anybody on the number or the email on there.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thank you for that very interesting and in-depth presentation.
You're more than welcome.
At the moment, there are no questions for you, but Carl will be on the panel later. And if you think of any questions, please do continue to submit those and we will forward those on to Carl. So thank you very much for now, Carl.
You're welcome. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So I'd like to now move on to our next presenter. And our next presenter, Mark Stratford, who will also be chairing the panel session. Mark is a late replacement, so thank you very much, one, for the presentation you're shortly about to give, and also for standing in to chair the panel session shortly. So Mark, if I can just say, is the commercial director at Apello. And you can see Mark now on the screen. If you could share your presentation, please, Mark.
Thank you very much, Terence. So I'll just put it into presentation mode. Hopefully you can all see that now.
Thank you, Mark.
At Apello, we've known really for the product on the left, the Smart Living Solution product, which is goes into shelter accommodation, is a tablet on the wall. We've got two relatively new products now. Smart Connect, which is a fully digital, end-to-end digital scheme shelter accommodation product, hardwired, use existing cabling. And we've got the Smart Life, which is our dispersed alarm product, which complements our Essence product because we still sell the Essence dispersed alarm. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Smart Life, which is the kind of new dispersed alarm that we're selling. So the first thing I'm going to do is play a quick video. Which should give you an idea of the product. So to give you a few highlights about the Smart Life product. So it's 869 radio receiver, class 1, which is what you'd expect from a dispersed alarm, but very different in the marketplace in that at Apello we don't manufacture peripherals. We may make one or two in the future, but it's relatively unlikely given that people like Care make such a huge range of high quality equipment. So what we've done is we've embedded multiple radio protocols into the product, and what that means is that I can use this product with Apello peripherals, I can use it with Care peripherals, or I can use it with Tunstall peripherals simultaneously. So if you have an existing estate of Tunstall dispersed alarms with a number of different peripherals, fall detectors, smoke detectors, they will all work with this unit, and going forward it will work with the new units, with the newer peripherals. And I think it's going to be an important step really moving forward in the interoperability story. I think it's been a long time coming, getting a product that actually mix and matches peripherals, and we'll be talking with our partners as well to see what other radio peripherals we can add to this unit. So we expect it to support more than three manufacturers in the near future. The next bit I'll pick on is the PSTN connection. I think in the UK we've still got a bit of a problem with monitoring centres. There's a lot of analog monitoring centres in the country. So you know, some manufacturers, if I pick Innovation, if I pick Jontech, if I pick Apello CareNet, are all digital monitoring centres. Unfortunately, some monitoring centres aren't digital and haven't been upgraded yet. And it's difficult to buy digital equipment if your monitoring centre is analog. So what this unit does is it actually has a PSTN telephone connection. So I can take the unit today, it's shipped with a SIM in it. I can plug it into the PSTN connection, to the telephone connection, and it'll work as a normal analog unit through to any monitoring centre that takes a BS8521 analog protocol. Now, what I can do then is at my leisure, I can do an over-there reprogramming. So we have a device management platform. I can log on, I can change the unit to digital. I can light the SIM up and away it goes, and it will signal in digital. What this unit will also do is monitor the telephone line. So if the telephone line voltage fails, i.e. the system's been upgraded, so Openreach have come along, upgraded the local telephony, and there's no telephone line, and the service user puts an alarm call onto the system will look for the telephone line. If it can't find it, it will light the SIM up, and it will communicate to the monitoring centre via the SIM. Now that's a digital call, so the monitoring centre needs to be digital, but it will communicate. And what we're doing actually is we're working on fallback protocols to say that to look at using DTMF protocols on the SIM, but unfortunately they're not hugely reliable. And I think that's another kind of industry first. Couple more pieces. We have the unit supports Bluetooth, so it means that we can have an extension speaker programmed to the unit. So it's a cheap Bluetooth speaker programmed to the unit. Now, it needs to be clear that the Bluetooth extension unit won't raise a call. So if you look at the Essence unit and their room extender, you can raise a call on that. You can't do that on the Bluetooth unit on here. It would just literally, you can press a pendant, you can answer a call on the unit, and you can talk on the unit, on the Bluetooth unit. So we've got an alarm button away, and we've got an I'm OK button as well. So this is for use with the Apello Cloud services, where a service user can actually say I'm OK or I'm not OK. So if we're looking at proactive calling and actually calling out to people, then it means that people can say, yeah, I'm OK, I do want to call or I don't want to call. And actually we can see that on the cloud services. It's got a integral ambient temperature sensor, and as you'd expect, it complies with all the relevant European standards. So a couple more bits about connectivity really. So I've mentioned the SIM, so it's shipped from the factory with a roaming SIM, a CSL SIM. It has a LAN connection, RJ45, so I can plug it into a router. It also has Wi-Fi, so I can connect to a Wi-Fi connection. The key about all of this is we support an encryption protocol called TLS. That's either TLS 1.2 or 1.3, which means all of our communications, if we're using Wi-Fi or if we're going over the open internet, are encrypted. I think that's really important as well. With a SIM, you have a private APN, so the encryption isn't as important, but going over internet, it really is important. The other thing to mention is we support SCAPE, or EN 50134 Part 9, the European Standard Protocol for Dispersed Alarms. We'll support Now IP. And that's really just if you've got a monitoring center that supports one protocol, doesn't support the other, or the other way around, doesn't matter. We can signal either or both in sequence. So as you'd expect, all the upgrades are over the air, programming, reprogramming. We can reprogram multiple units simultaneously. We can upgrade them. So as firmware upgrades come out, they're automatically pushed out to the units over the air. Unit has a heartbeat. And again, in our case, the unit heartbeats to the cloud service. Cloud service is designed to receive heartbeats. Monitoring centers are designed to receive calls. And the issue with failing heartbeats, if I send them to the monitoring center, is the monitoring center doesn't really need to know. It's the owner of the unit that needs to know. That might be the service provider, it might be the commissioner. So we heartbeat, and we can heartbeat down to every minute if we wish, but normally 30 minutes, hour, however you decide to heartbeat. But what we can do is automatically send emails or SMSs to the owner of the unit if a unit's switched off, if the unit's been unplugged, if the battery's getting low, if there's a problem with the unit. So I think that's going to be important for the whole industry moving forward, looking at how digital services expand. You know, if I look at the Essence unit with the Vital on telehealth, that's going to be a really important service moving forward. Now, this unit isn't designed to do that. It's designed to be a dispersed alarm unit. It's not the kind of high-end functionality like the Essence unit is. But looking at the cloud services and the way that you manage the unit is going to be the piece that I think makes a big difference moving forward. I think when we look at digital dispersed alarms, we tend to think, how am I going to replace the estate that I've got? And I think more and more, as we understand what the units can do and we understand the extra functionality that comes out of these units, it's going to be, yes, how can I replace what I've got, but how can I use this to deliver more, enhance people's lives, and ultimately save money? So if I can save visits by I'm okay, if I can be proactive with the resident being able to say, I want to call or I don't want to call, rather than, well, we call Mark once a week, every week, so we're going to call him anyway. You know, things like that are going to improve the way that we deliver these services. I think that's going to be really important moving forward. So I'm going to stop there. Just see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mark. There's one point from Dave Andrews. Dave Andrews is from Hertfordshire Council. He's raised the point about existing estate of peripherals and the automatic failover of PSTN to digital. It might be a question you want to take now or take it forward to the panel. I'll leave that to you, Mark.
So I will I'll answer the first bit, and I think it's worth the panel answering the question as well. I think protecting the state of peripherals is really important. I think it's been really, really difficult in the past to be able to cross over these peripherals and these radio protocols, and it's taken somebody to kind of stand up and say, you know, this is what we're going to do for that to happen. And certainly, you know, when we talk about the kind of PSTN failover, again, I think it's something that we need to be considering because of the slow uptake of digital connectivity in the arts. Stuart, have you got a view on that question?
Can we take that forward to the panel?
Yeah, okay.
There's one more question that's come up from Deborah. Again, it might be a panel question. I don't know if you can see that on your screen, Mark. Will you be
exploring the use of LP1, LoRaWAN as a dedicated purpose-built network for the Internet of Things? Yeah, I think that's going to come, undoubtedly, and that's why we've got a wireless receiver on the unit. At the moment, it is only Wi-Fi, but I think LoRaWAN, narrowband IoT, these things are going to come along. And whilst I don't think they'll ever be the primary signal source, I think they will definitely be a signal source.
And one more question from Alison.
Yes, absolutely. Digital hearing aids. Yes, we could Bluetooth it to hearing aids as well.
one more. Does the system allow the service provider to log into the unit remotely in order to check the peripherals or trace specific alarms?
So the answer is yes, it does. You can log into the unit, you can see all the programming, you can see the peripherals, you can see everything that's connected to the system. What I think will happen, what won't happen right now with one-way radio is you won't be able to see where the peripherals are and you won't get the presence. With two-way radio, which the unit supports, then what will happen, I think, is the peripherals will become more intelligent and we'll be able to do things like interrogate peripherals. And we've already got presence on pendants. So if a pendant's taken away from the unit reports in 12 hours or 24 hours if the pendant's not present. So I think that will become more and more intelligent.
All right, thank you now. Thank you for now, Mark. And
Thanks.
we need to move on to our next presenter. Thank you, Mark. Our next presenter is Richard Bailey, and Richard Bailey is the Country Manager for UK and Ireland at Telealarm. I can see your presentation starting.
You could just bear with me while I switch the video on. I've lost the video for some reason. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you, Richard.
There we go. That's better. Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, I can see you now as well, and I can see your presentation.
Very
So
good.
I'd like to hand you over to Richard now to start the presentation.
Technology. So thanks for inviting me for the presentation for the UK Telehealthcare team for allowing me today. My name's Richard Bailey. I'm the Country Manager for the UK and Ireland for Telealarm. I'd like to start with a brief introduction to the company. So Telealarm was founded in Switzerland in 1956. Our head office is in Leipzig in Germany. Our R&D is based in Switzerland, and we have the motto Swiss design made in Germany. It's a European thing, but we prefer to say Swiss precision with German engineering. We have sales offices throughout Europe, and we've been providing high quality telecare devices and peripherals to the UK for over 20 years. And we roughly sell around 12,000 digital telecare devices in the UK and Ireland per year. Our parent company is Cartech GmbH, and the production of Telealarm products is at Cartech Leipzig. We have a production area of 17,000 square meters, which is roughly around about 2.5 football pitches. It's a huge factory. We have an SMD, so component placement capacity of 1.4 million components per hour and a capacity of 9 million assemblies or systems per year. We have very high quality products. So we're accredited with ISO 9001 2015. And we have a very low warranty return rate. And it's especially important with the current situation with the COVID crisis and global component shortages. Our target for warranty returns is 0.65%, but it's currently at 0.41. So that means for every 1,000 products that we deliver, 4 of them are actually returned for some reason or another. We have a 3-year back to base standard warranty, and we provide free collection and replacement of any equipment that is found to be defective. So in the UK, there's myself, Chris and Dave. We've all been in the industry a long time. We have a combined technical experience of over 75 years. We provide excellent support to our customers, and we provide free training and awareness sessions to the industry. And we like to believe that we provide unbiased information for you to make your purchasing decisions. So I want to give you an overview of some of one of the awareness sessions that we provide. So we go through and explain in detail the 3 methods of connectivity. So the first one is the analog PSTN connection, and basically the device makes an outgoing telephone call to the monitoring center using the DTMF or single tone protocol. We also explain and go through broadband Ethernet. So we're not talking about actually using what's called the ATA. And if you look at the picture on the bottom right-hand side there, that's the back of the new BT router. And you'll see that green little connector. That's the telephone port, or what BT are calling the ATA. when we talk about a broadband Ethernet call, we're actually plugging the device into one of the yellow ports, which is an Ethernet port, which makes the data and voice over IP. It's a full end-to-end digital connection. And we also go through mobile IP, so including a SIM card as well. We go through the reliability of the devices on each connectivity method. We also explain about the 3G and 2G sunset, so the eventual switch off of the 3G networks and 2G networks. We talk about security and encryption and the new TS 50134-9 technical standard, which includes encryption on the SCAPE protocol. And we also explain the benefits and challenges with roaming SIM cards. There's a snapshot of some of our customers. I'm sure that they'd be happy to give us a glowing reference. So if you can get this presentation, if you want to talk to any of our customers, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you about our products and the way that we provide support. So experiencing IP technology, we developed and launched our first IP device in 2010 when we were part of the Bosch Healthcare Group, which is the HTS62 product. When we left the Bosch Group in 2015, we started working on the TA family devices. So in 2017, we launched the device in Europe called the TA72, and it's a basic, what we would call a button and box device. It works on analog and broadband Ethernet, but very basic. In 2018, we launched the TA74, which is the full telecare device. And then in 2019, we launched the TA74 GSM, which is mobile, broadband Ethernet and analog. And in December of this year, so in a couple of weeks, we'll launch the TA74 4G product. And early next year, we'll launch the mobile app and Bluetooth transmitter. So it's an actual pendant that works in the home with the TA family units, but out and about, it'll work with a mobile application. So we like to think that we have a device for all applications and connectivity methods. Mobile IP, we have a 4G, 3G, 2G networks. We can provide a device with or without a SIM, and we can provide a device with roaming SIM cards. We have a VPN for mobile IP connections where the control center requires that, and our VPN is with Mobius networks. That makes the GSM device TS 50134-9 compliant because it involves this level of encryption and security through the VPN. Broadband Ethernet connections, we will have compliance. The guys in our R&D team are working on that. And one of the things Mark would be interested in is, can we do set up some testing with Apello on the TLS in a few weeks? So I'll put that one to you shortly. And we have an analog PSTN connection, so you can manage this the digital transition. So if the end user just has a phone line at the moment, you can use a device with an analog connection and then update it and reprogram it afterwards. I'm sure everybody's aware, but some benefits of digital connectivity, and I'm sure we'll come on to this a bit later on, but we have remote status monitoring and programming, quicker call times to the ARC, better audio quality, less service visits to the customer premises, and upgradable firmware, which means that the devices can always have the latest feature set. We have our remote device management portal, so as is Telealarm Cloud Services, and you can monitor the status of your devices. You can remotely configure and program them. We have something called storage management, where you can have devices that are out in the field. It's a sort of virtual locations, or to be set up, to be programmed, to make it very easy to know what status of the device is. We create with you programming templates for easy setup, so your installers don't have to be highly trained on IP information, IP addresses and port numbers and things like that. We also have batch programming, which means multiple units at once. And we also have the email reports for lost connections. So if, as Mark said, if somebody unplugs it, or if they take the SIM out, an email is sent to the service provider or to a number of recipients. We also have sub-organizations. So if you have a large local authority and you have smaller groups, we can create little organizations within that one account, so you can manage your devices easier. And we have admin rights management within the portal. And we also have API, which is linked to other systems, CRM tools or other control centers and so on. We have a full range of different personal and environmental devices. So we also work with Care in the UK, Alert It for epilepsy monitoring and other products, and things, and companies like Pivotel for pill dispensers. I'll not go through all of them, but we have a full range of peripherals. We also have an extension speaker microphone, so we call it the audio extender, and it allows two-way speech into any room within the house. Works with both analog, broadband and mobile connectivity, and great for large properties, and it helps reduce no response calls. We move over to the analog to digital transition. Telealarm, as I said, myself, Chris and Dave, we help to manage this digital transition. We've already got devices live and working with the following on ARC. So on broadband Ethernet, mobile IP and analog BS8521, we have them working with Innovation UMO. So we have a factory acceptance test. We're also working on all of the methods with Chubb Saturn, also the Apello system. There's a company called Hawkeye Care that have what's called a Bold Gemini receiver, which is mainly for security, but that is now receiving telecare dispersed alarms. And we've also done some testing in Germany with the Tunstall PNC. We're very eager to do some tests in the UK, but we don't know of any PNCs that are SCAPE ready yet. And on mobile IP and BS8521, we have live units with the Jontech 3G platform. So one thing that we've noticed as we've been doing our tests and live installs, etc., each ARC software platform handles their IP connectivity differently. So in the olden days of analog, we would need an alarm line number, a protocol to use, and an ID number. As we move to SCAPE, we now need URLs or IP addresses. We need to know what port number is open. Potentially, we need SIP usernames and passwords, proxy server information, and make sure we need to ensure that the VPN is configured correctly. We also have different voice calling methods. So SIP voice, we also, if we're using GSM units at the minute, when you put a call on, it sends a data message and then is followed up with a mobile voice call. And as discussed in previous presentations, we have 4G VoLTE, which is voice over long-term evolution. This is what we call under the hood stuff. So we manage this configuration and we create templates with our clouds in our cloud services platform for your installers. So they don't have to get involved in all of this. We make it very easy to configure the devices. It's very quick to program and only basic training is required. And finally, one thing we've sort of borrowed from innovation is we've developed the telealarm customer acceptance test. So before any telealarm units go live, we compatibility test the devices with the customer ARC. This provides confidence to the service provider and also helps us to understand the configuration. And we can communicate any issues that we find with the ARC software providers. So we obviously test broadband Ethernet, mobile IP. We also test analog fallback, VPN connection, disaster recovery testing. We test every available alarm type and every technical alert, such as mains failures, lost pendants, low batteries, and so on. So why choose Telealarm? We've been developing telecare products for over 40 years. We like to believe that we have products to suit all applications, very high quality and ISO accredited. We have a low warranty return rate. We have very satisfied customers, and we provide excellent technical support and training. We'll help you manage your digital transition and we'll provide unbiased information for you to make purchasing decisions. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Richard. There's a comment from Richard. You might be able to see on the screen. It says, hi, the TA74 we have found fits both platforms easily, Bold, Gemini and UMO. We are operating both and no issues whatsoever, really quick.
Yeah, it's a lot of sort of initial work to make sure that the units communicate correctly. So as part of this compatibility testing, we take this on board and then we don't really would let anything go out live until it's fully tested. So yeah, that's great news.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for now. So we're running right on schedule. In fact, a few minutes early. Thank you to the presenters, to Carl, Mark, and Richard. We've had questions that have been submitted for the next session, the panel session. Please do, as we have, we're well within time, please continue to submit your questions. The panel will respond to the questions submitted and continue to take as many questions as they can during the session that will follow shortly. So if I could now move on to the second part of today's event, if I could ask Mark to join me again, please. Thank you, Mark. And if I could hand it over to you, Mark, to start the panel discussion. Thank you, Mark.
Marvellous. Thank you very much, Terence. So just to kick off the panel discussion, we've got a couple of short presentations. So I'm going to hand over now to Michael Swaffield, who is the Social Care Connectivity Manager for NHSX. Hi, Michael. And Richard Parkinson, who's Director for Farpoint. Morning, Richard.
Morning.
Hi, Mark. Hi, everyone. Can you see me at the moment?
Yes, we can, Michael.
Great, thank you. I'm as sort of Mark said, I'm from NHSX, and if you think of NHSX as the sort of the joint unit of the Department of Health and Social Care and NHS England, and we have a very, very firm focus on digital and sort of tech issues for England, and you'll have seen perhaps last week that in the near future we are merging with NHS Digital to sort of really firm up that sort of role in terms of digital tech and data. I see our role in sort of terms of the switchover really as sort of supporting the sector in sort of terms of awareness for the switchover and the preparations that sort of should be taking place, and working with the sector and the communications providers in a practical way to sort of try and mitigate some of the issues and risks that are becoming present, and also I think and in light of the previous presentations to encourage investment in modern future-proof services and sort of tech. As sort of part of this work, what we want to do was to really find out what the current situation was across the sector in terms of awareness and preparation. So NHSX commissioned Farpoint to sort of look at sort of what sort of is sort of happening currently out there. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Richard, who is just going to cover some of the emerging issues from that sort of piece of work.
Thank you, Michael. And just trying to bring up some slides. So hopefully you can see those.
Can indeed.
Brilliant. So good morning. As Michael said, I'm Richard Parkinson from Farpoint. We are technology consultancy, and we've been working in technology-enabled care and telecare now for about 5 or 6 years, predominantly in Scotland, but also working in Wales and for a number of other councils. As Michael said, we've been commissioned to complete this piece of work by NHSX, looking at the digital shift and what impact it is going to have on telecare and tech services. it's what I've got here is just kind of 2 or 3 slides just to give an overview of where we've got to with this. It's still a work in progress. The study's still being completed. We're going through a 2-stage process. We went and asked telecare providers and suppliers to fill in an online survey, and we got about 50 responses back to that. And what we're now doing is going out and talking to a range of stakeholders, and you can see the list of the types of people that we're talking to there, to get into a bit more depth about what the impact of the digital shift may be. And we're doing about 30 odd interviews at the moment. As I say, they're still ongoing. So the idea is that we're going to pull together the findings of this into a report for NHSX, which will be published at some point in the first quarter of next year, so before March. In terms of what we're looking at, what are the questions that we've been asking? There's really 4 main areas that we are examining. One is about the level of awareness about the digital shift. The phone line, this is the phone lines that are obviously being moved across to digital by 2025. So what's the level of awareness amongst telecare providers, the telecare industry more broadly of that? And what's the level of awareness about the impact that change is going to have on telecare services? And from that, what's the level of concern? Are people worried about it? Are they fairly ambivalent about it, or very happy about it? From that question of are you aware of it? The next question is, what are you doing about it? What are providers and the supplier market doing to respond to that? And obviously there's a lot of presentations already this morning with lots of people talking about digital kit. But what does that actually mean, given that we've got a 2025 deadline when this is going to be finished? How are people progressing to meet that deadline? Opportunities and challenges. And I think opportunities is a key part of this. I think there's a lot of emphasis on some of the challenges associated with the digital shift, but also there's a lot of opportunities there. So just understanding, what are the pros and the cons associated with this move across to digital. And the final part of the jigsaw is what additional support could be provided to the telecare industry, to telecare providers and the supplier market to help them make that change, and then to help them make sure that they make best use of the technology that's been deployed as a result of the change. So as I say, this is all a work in progress at the moment. I've got the next slide is really talking about the last bullet here, the additional support and guidance, because although we're still doing the interviews, there are quite a number of themes starting to emerge. So I was quite keen just to provide an overview of those and see what people's thoughts were about whether they sound like appropriate areas of support for the industry. So these are the kinds of areas that we've identified where there could be a need for additional support. And just before I run through these, and maybe just worth a couple of health warnings on the bullets on this slide. As I say again, this is still a work in progress, so this isn't a complete list. It's just some of the key themes that are coming out, and we are aware that some of the things on this list are already being completed. So part of the action here is for maybe NHSX or some other part of government or industry, just to keep an eye on that and check that any advice that's being provided is complete, and also that it's been provided to everybody. Obviously some advice is provided by different groups, and there's maybe subsets and memberships, etc., that have access to it and others don't. So it's about this advice being available to everybody trying to make the shift. And the final point is that if this is on the list, it's not about NHSX or somebody else jumping in and saying, right, this is us, we're going to do all of this stuff. It's more of a facilitation role, just to make sure that this is happening and that somebody is doing it, rather than being a center of all of this activity themselves. So as I say, that we've split it under 4 headings, and I'll just run through all of these just relatively briefly. The first one is around coordination. I think when you start looking at telecare in England, I mean, the first thing that hits you is that there's a very complex mix of kind of telecare suppliers, telecare providers, flavors of service being provided, how they're provided, etc., etc. It's quite a complex mix. So there's really a role there for someone providing a bit more of a coordination between telecare industry, suppliers, the telco markets, etc. Join this shift across to digital, just to make sure that everybody's kind of aware of what everybody else is doing, that any issues and best practices are learnt, etc., etc. So there's a role there for somebody to do that, to provide those better links. The links to the telcos is a key one that we keep hearing. We know that each of the telcos is providing different is completing the shift in different ways, but people are asking for, is there more that can be done about getting a bit more information about where and when shift to digital lines are going to happen, and also a bit more information about, how do we make sure that telecare users are flagged as vulnerable users? What does that actually mean in practice in terms of, do they get a battery? Do they get an on-site visit when they're upgraded, etc., etc.? And the other point on here is just about linking to other projects that are related to the digital shift. A lot of organizations we speak to, they provide telecare, but they're also looking at the digital shift in terms of its impact on fire panels, lift lines, etc., etc. So it's joining with some of these other work programs as well, just to make sure that best practice and lessons are learnt between all these different programs of work as well. Under communication, a really kind of common theme that we hear is about the need for consistent terminology. Everyone's talking about the shift of phone lines to digital, but everybody uses a different name to describe it. So you hear digital shift, you hear all IP, you hear internet voice, you hear fiber calls, etc., etc. So that doesn't help telecare providers when they're trying to communicate with the public and service users to tell them, look, you need to let us know if you're upgraded to digital, if there's a dozen different ways of describing what service it is that you're telling them to keep an eye out for. So a need for a bit more consistency and some guidance about what messages to provide to telecare service users and the public. Trying to increase awareness amongst the public and service users more generally about the digital shift. It seems to be a bit of a gap at the moment, that there's not a huge amount of awareness there. And the final one about identifying telecare contacts. I think you hear 1.8 million as a figure that's quoted a lot. About number of telecare service users in the UK. I think if we're honest, that's the best guess that anyone's got. Nobody's got a better number. So there's a need, I think, to get a better handle on who is providing telecare services in order that the industry can communicate better with those providers to provide best advice and make sure that they're kind of making the move across to digital. Best practice and guidance. This is around providing practical, authoritative, unbiased advice around the shift to digital, and that's around kind of some of the technology questions and the operational impact of the move to digital as well. We hear the same things come up again and again. People asking about analog adapters. Are they reliable? Should we be using them? Seems to be quite a lot of mixed messaging out there. And that links to the bullet there about development of definitions. What is the definition of a reliable connection for telecare? There isn't one or there isn't a consistent one that everybody's using, and should there be one? And the final one there about identifying and sharing best practice. It's still relatively early days in terms of the rollout of digital telecare. There's not massive numbers of at-scale deployments of digital telecare, but as there is, that needs to be identified and the lessons learned and best practice for that shared amongst the telecare community, so everyone can learn from that. And then the last box there, business case and strategy. That's really a bit more of a forward-looking set of actions. So it's less about the getting across to digital by 2025, and it's more forward-looking and saying, right, well, once we've got all this digital technology, what can we do with it? And there does seem to be a lot of appetite in the telecare providers that we're speaking to use this. It's not about a like-for-like shift. It is about looking to make some more fundamental changes to what their services, what's the services they offer, and how they're delivered. So a lot of personalised, proactive, and preventative services being looked at, better use of smart technology, smart consumer devices, etc. So this is about developing some of the business cases around that, showing the impact that might have on the wider health and care system, and promoting service transformation. So that at a high level is some of the areas, and I know that there's quite a lot in there, but we are starting to kind of document this and pull this together into some recommendations for NHSX. We would be interested in hearing your thoughts on this, in terms of, is that an appropriate list? Is there anything obvious missing from it that should be provided to telecare industry in order to help people make this shift across to digital? So please do kind of feedback any thoughts on that, either in the chat today, or we've put a contact email address there on the slide as well that people can use. And that's it from me. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you very much, Mike and Richard. We've got a few questions in the chat, so I'm just going to combine a couple. So we've got first question says, do NHSX understand the scale of the challenge, and has this been highlighted to government? And do government understand the cost of the move from analogue to digital for the telecare industry? And will you guys be lobbying the government for financial support to help people like local authorities invest in new digital service model that makes full use of the IoT offering?
Thanks, Mark, and everyone. I think that there's a sort of a process to sort of go through here, isn't there? I think in terms of service providers, you know, they'll sort of all sort of be at different stages in terms of contracts and the type of kit they're sort of using, and sort of how sort of that's you know, provided. And I think what is coming out of the study is that you know, some very few local authorities, for example, have gone through the process and sort of have sort of set plans in place for the future. Most local authorities providers haven't got that far yet, and it's important to sort of see what the options are in sort of terms of their area, in terms of what you know, in terms of sort of configuring tech or sort of in the approach that sort of might sort of have to be taken, and to sort of access what sort of funding might be available both regionally and locally as well, especially as part of the work around integrated care systems and sort of funding like the Unified Tech Fund. I think what I'm trying to do is to identify some of that existing funding which might be able to be accessed. But I think there's a role for local authorities and providers to sort of think through what their sort of service change might be, if that frees up other money and funding in terms of the preventative care sort of agenda. But I think the main thing that's coming out of this for me and the study is that people need to have that advice and sort of looking at their sort of existing services, but sort of also needing to know where sort of funding might sort of be available as well.
Thank you very much, Mike. I think funding is going to be a hot topic moving forward. One more question for you. So we'd like to do more to share the information and advice on solutions with the public and professional stroke prescribers of assistive technology. What are the barriers to sharing solution details? So we lack end user stories. How can we all find and develop these? Maybe one for you, Richard.
Thanks for I think that one of the elements that we've highlighted in those slides was just the need to get better at identifying best practice and sharing it. So I think what are the barriers? Hopefully we can actually get rid of some of those barriers and make it a lot easier to share these kind of stories. And it does need to kind of focus on that, obviously on that end user perspective of this as well. As I say, people that we've spoken to, and this links into to one of the other questions about Internet of Things, etc., is that people are very keen to not necessarily use this as a like-for-like transition of their services across to digital. They are keen to use some of these technologies, and they do recognize that, you know, on the point about funding, that the business case does start to get a lot stronger as soon as you start talking about preventative and proactive services, personalized services, because you can start to then build in a wider impact on especially on the health side. So the business case starts to look a lot better. So we do need to get better at pulling some of these kind of wider opportunities to develop services into our thinking around this.
I think you're right, and I think that's going to develop moving forward as well as more and more people adopt digital technology. The last thing for me, it's just great to see NHSX kind of front and centre and taking a big interest in this industry. And the thing that I picked up from your presentation, a lot of us, we talk about challenges, but you also picked on opportunities as well, which I think is going to be needs to be a bigger theme going forward. So thank you very much for your presentation. So I'm now going to hand over to Sarah Shepherd, who's Head of Digital Phone Switchover for Tech UK. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Mark. I am hopefully sharing my screen. Is that coming up?
It's just starting, I think.
Oh, brilliant. Tell me when you can see, otherwise I'll just talk a lot, which I'm also very good at.
We can see your screen. If you could pop it into full screen mode, that would be great.
Is that there?
Lovely, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. That was a great presentation. Thank you, Richard and Michael. And I think some of what I'm going to be talking about is in a very similar vein, which is always good to be on the same kind of page. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and my role, which is it's a newly created role. It has been created by the communication providers and Openreach in kind of recognition of some of these common challenges and barriers to the migration to all IP. I think we all know the background about why this is happening, but as a very quick two-line recap, it's because the PSTN is coming to the end of its life. And so we need to move on to a new network. And the end goal, obviously, is full fibre deployment. And as an essential precursor to that, we need to be switching off the PSTN and moving everything to all IP or future solutions in that way. So one of the things that has been very apparent on this is that there are areas where industry, the telecommunications industry working together is going to be pretty key at kind of making a slightly smoother migration. And so this role, this digital phone switchover role, which is housed within Tech UK, which is a trade association with hundreds of members in the tech space. And so my role is going to be looking at where this collaboration is really going to be helpful. And actually, as Richard has very helpfully pointed out, some of the areas that are being looked at is communications and coordination. So what I'll be doing is working kind of through, I suppose, on a sector-specific way and looking to see, you know, like within each of the sectors, because of course, telehealthcare is a huge issue for consumers and enterprise and business. But there are many, many other challenges across there. But this focus on the telehealthcare is something that Virgin, TalkTalk, BT, Sky. These are the CPs that I know about that have been doing it. They've been engaging for many years on this, and there are some common challenges that are kind of coming through. Funding, obviously, being one of them, which I can't resolve because I don't have a magic money box. But communications is quite a key one. And I suppose what CPs are concerned about, as is the telehealthcare sector, is what actually happens on the day. So in the CP's dream world, you'll just kind of move the customers over, and it will almost be an invisible transition, and they'll just kind of unplug their device, replug in their telephone, and off they go. But the concerns, I suppose, for a telehealthcare customer, for a CP, is identifying them, getting the right comms in place, making sure that in advance of all this migration, that the kit that the customer is using has been tested at many of the labs that are available, that it is compatible. And it's looking at how to coordinate that role going forward so that the on-the-day transition is key. It has been kind of arranged in advance so that for the end customer, it is not a confusing experience and it's a very straightforward one. I'm skipping all over the place on my slide, sorry. So that's the telehealthcare. One of the communications one is at the moment, the CPs have coordinated and worked together on producing a website called The Future of Voice, which you may have seen. It's not a huge website, but it's there, and it's kind of there to provide this legitimacy to the migration so that customers don't feel confused if they're being contacted by their provider. They don't feel like they're being missold something. So it is this is the industry-wide migration. And I'll be looking at how we can make that website a bit better, how we can put more messaging on there, how we can make it better for the telehealthcare industry, end customers, anybody that's looking at that website, and in particular, I suppose, local authorities and the charities and third sector, because the more vulnerable customers, we can be working with Age Concern, with Which, with any of the charities that will help them with the migration and getting the information out there. Very often it won't be the customer themselves doing it, it might be a friend or a family. And another key thing that I'll be doing is increasing the engagement. I know there's a lot of excellent speakers from the different CPs and network operators that have been attending these events and working with you for many years on this, but it's trying to make sure that nobody's missed out. And so I'm taking on this coordinating role just to keep spreading that message and getting the awareness out there. So for telehealthcare, and I'm sorry, I kind of skipped ahead to this one, and I'll go back. I've kind of divided into three what the issues are that we're recognizing. And I suppose kind of what the solutions or the asks might be. So signaling, as you're all very aware from the very technical presentations I heard earlier, that sometimes the the PSTN device may not work on the IP network, but we need to test and sure. Sometimes it will, sometimes it might not work as well, but there are test labs available, they're all open. And I've put the details of that on the next slide for anybody that may want to test it. I suppose one of the concerns from CP industry-wide point is that has the kit been tested on each of the different networks, just to make sure it kind of works on each, and how can we be sure that that's happening? There's no kind of synchronized repository of that information, and it's something that I think we might perhaps have to look at and see about how we can do that a little better, perhaps. The connectivity, this one is actually, so it goes back to the fact that you might be disconnecting and reconnecting devices, and that's that on-the-day experience, which clearly is something concerning me because I raised it first. It is how could we do it better, perhaps, that on-the-day thing, so that a customer doesn't feel a bit bamboozled about it. We want everything kind of prepared in advance, but also that reassurance that nobody has been left disconnected. And that is something, I think, Richard, that will probably have come up in the research you're doing. And perhaps we could look at how we can work to produce some best practice around that so that we can all feel more confident that there is going to be nobody left disconnected. And then finally, resilience. And I'm aware from my many years working in this space that the power does seem to be of an issue. CPs are providing, as required by Ofcom, the resilient solution that will meet the needs of the consumer to be able to make phone calls in the event of a power outage. But obviously, without the line powering of the PSTN, any devices that were hanging off that and using that power, that will be gone. 2025 is the date that's thrown around because that's when the OpenReach stop serve kicks in at the end of 2025. In some areas, it may be earlier than that, depending on whether or not it's going through a managed migration, depending on whether it's a CP moving at a different rate. And it may be depending on what the products being used at, maybe a little bit later than that. But 2025 as a general is the date that the majority of lines will be not working. And then my final slide is just with the contact details and where to find out more from Openreach and the CPs. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions now or wait for the panel at the end.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for that. Really informative. Quick question here says, my understanding is the network providers will not reconnect telecare equipment in the person's home if they've been upgraded. Is that still the case?
I mean, I can't talk for individual CPs. I'm talking in a general principle. I think the concern is that we don't, nobody would want to see somebody left disconnected because they're confused. So I think it's going to be a case of getting the communications right. If it's a person marked as vulnerable, some CPs may do a engineer install, but whether or not that will extend to telecare devices, I don't know. But I think this is an area that we can talk to. I suppose my power could be in a convening role. I can work with NHSX, I can work with Michael and Richard and with the CPs to get people in the room to talk through what would be a good way to do it.
Brilliant, thanks. One question for me. We talk a lot about communication and how we do these things, and everybody that's listening to this call will have understood the central government funding thing. Do you think you can help with lobbying central government to get them to really understand what's going on? Local authorities, at some stage will need some money, and being as cash strapped as they are, the only way they can be really proactive is to proactively replace analog equipment before it's upgraded.
I mean, asking for money from government is always an interesting one.
It is.
It's something I think if there are like fundamental blockers, that's what we can bring to the attention of government. It's not necessarily we'll get any money out of them, but I think having the conversations with the relevant government departments in the room, and I suppose Treasury will be key to all of this, is something that I can help convene, but I'm actually getting the money out of them might be a little bit harder. But I suppose as the awareness is raised, and if it is such an obvious solution, at some point, something will have to give. Yeah,
and I think it's the awareness that we want to raise. Thank you. Very much appreciated. So we'll move on to the panel session now, if there's no more questions for Sarah. So if I can ask the panelists to join us on screen. Thank you very much, everyone. So, folks, on the panel, we've got a huge amount of experience and knowledge. So I urge you, if you've got any questions at all, please pop them into the chat, and we'll discuss them. I'm going to start with a couple of questions that we've had sent in. So the first question, and I'm going to put this to three of our equipment suppliers. So when will products and monitoring centres be purely digital, not hybrid? So Carl, can I go to you first for an answer?
I don't mind going first. I think we're in a unique position here because we haven't got a portfolio out there of analog equipment. We've started at digital and always supplied in the UK digital equipment. So we don't have that estate out there that we also need to worry about. So we're promoting kind of what the last three presentations have put together really is that digital is perfectly possible now. We recognize the fact that it's more expensive. So what we're trying to add is value to the products that we can offer. So like you say, it presents challenges, but also presents opportunities to provide wider services. I'm trying to avoid talking about ARCs in this because we're all aware that the majority of ARCs in the UK aren't digitally ready yet. So we need to join up the dots there, only being one end of the problem being Essence. There needs to be both sides of that need to be able to play ball to be able to offer those solutions. We're at Essence probably digging our heels in and saying we are not doing any analog is a fine statement to make, but it also means that we're waiting for people to catch up.
Yeah, definitely. So just in the order that you're on my screen, Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, Carl's quite right in that there's two ends to the end-to-end solution. There's the ARC end and there's residential end. And the residential end could be a dispersed alarm, it could be a piece of scheme equipment. So we need to consider both when we're answering the hybrid question. I think whilst there are still analog dispersed alarms and schemes out there needs to be a hybrid ARC. And I think whilst there are ARCs that aren't digitally ready, there needs to be hybrid outfield equipment. So the answer is, I guess, simplistically, until your last connection churns from analog to digital, there needs to be a hybrid solution. I think the longest journey starts with a single step. There needs to be an evolutionary approach to how we deal with this. So, for a lot of years, I've been advocating stopping spending any new money on non-digitally ready equipment, because then you'll end up with an evolutionary churn. If you don't buy any more analog devices, then eventually those analog devices will be replaced by digital devices, and therefore the need for hybrid will disappear.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Thanks, Stuart. And Richard.
Yeah, as Stuart and Carl said, just emphasising the point that the control centres are the big issue in our opinion, is that the majority of the ARCs in the UK aren't digitally ready or able to receive IP connectivity calls. So, you should, if you have a control centre that isn't digitally ready, you need to be pushing your provider to say what's happening with this, because we've only got a few years left and it takes quite a while to get this upgraded and to test and to make sure that everything's working correctly. So, that from me, it has to start with the monitoring centre.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Thanks very much. So next question, what's happening in ERA in this regard? So I know, Richard, you've done some work in Ireland. Yeah, so on a previous presentation or webinar, Ronan Bunting from Task was on. Task are our partners and they're a leading national provider in Ireland. I'm sure that Ronan would be happy to speak with anyone in more detail. The invitation would be open except to any suppliers that are on the call. There was a recent tender by the Irish government for telecare service provision nationally in Ireland. This is mainly for analog devices, but there was some inclusion for digital devices looking towards the future. From Task's perspective, they've been installing digitally ready devices for about 10 years with our HTS62 product, and they've been using IP connectivity for about 4 years after a monitoring centre upgrade that we helped them out with. They had lots of issues in Ireland with analog legacy protocols, especially over mobile networks, which was a huge problem. So we worked with them and we helped set up a digital solution at their monitoring centre. And the upgrade solved all of their issues with failed calls and redial attempts. They now have many thousands of devices connected using IP protocols, and they work with CSL. So for Richard Parkinson, I think it might be worth to get you talking to Ronan Bunting just to get some of that sort of reference or case study information on what is happening, where it's working really well, it providing more confidence. So I'm going to pass you over to Max as well, because he'll have some information from Task in Ireland.
Yeah, so like Richard said, so Ireland is basically going through the same process as the UK is in terms of the PSTN upgrade to digital. It's been mentioned previously, and there is a link on UKTelehealthcare's website. But we have a map of all of the exchanges across the UK that are going that we are aware of with stop sell dates through OpenReach. But we also have the same with Aircom in Ireland as well. So if anyone's interested in sort of that timeline with Ireland, that is also available on our website via the All IP map. But yeah, so specifically Task in Ireland, and we do work with other providers in Ireland as well, both north and south. But Task, like Richard says, we're seeing an increase in failed calls due to this upgrade process that was happening with the telephone lines from analog to digital. And by switching to the digital to to use mobile IP rather than the analog tones, they were able to basically get ahead of that switch, and they don't see failed calls anymore.
Great. Thanks very much for that, folks. So next question. What are the 3 main new services which can be delivered following analog to digital transition? Richard, can I ask you to pass comment on that one?
Me or Richard Parkinson?
Sorry, Richard Parkinson. Sorry, Richard.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, I need to change my name. So I can tell you that the 3 that are highlighted most frequently in the discussions that we've been having, I think are around preventative services and using kind of more monitoring of activities of daily living, kit, etc., to head off adverse events before they happen. Closer integration with health and kind of more use of telehealth devices, and more integration with some of the technology that telecare users already have in their homes. So you know, the Alexas and the smartwatches and the Apple Watches, etc., etc. They're probably the 3 that come up most frequently in the discussions that we're having. But there is quite a wide range of new applications and services that people are looking at. So I mean, they're the most common, but it's by no means all of them that we're hearing.
Yeah, and I think we're all learning as we go along as well. You know, whilst the digital transition has been on our minds for quite some time, I think it's been a very slow uptake. So what we're seeing now is we're at the start of almost the curve where things are starting to move, and the digital transition is creating a lot more questions, a lot more thoughts about what else we could do.
Okay. If it's, I just wanted to let you know, I was in Wakefield yesterday to help with one of our what's called an AIM installation, which is activity monitoring. It was still using an analog connection, but it's a digital device. And I think we installed in total about 14 different sensors. But one of the things is that I found really interesting is that the family had self-installed the Ring Wi-Fi cameras in the property. So basically what they were doing is, if the control center was receiving an inactivity alert, the control center were then calling the family member to say, can you just check on your mum? And they could see on their phone, you know, the living room and the kitchen and so on, and just say, oh, actually, she's sat in a different chair than the sensor's been put on. So, you know, you never know what's happening with somebody when you're not in the property, but because they can look in, they can actually see what they're doing, which is part of this is having, you know, access with the digital connection. They can put these Ring cameras in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that, Richard. Really good case there. So next question: will people need to buy a new phone when we switch to digital? Sarah, can I ask you for a comment on that one?
For the most part, no. I think a lot of them will be adaptable with the terminal adapter on it. This is going into technology, which is not my strong space. Sometimes they might need to, and I don't know for each CP if that is the case, but my understanding is they won't need to. There'll just be a little adapter that will work for them.
Yeah, I think there will be. That certainly a lot of CPs are providing hubs with analog terminal adapters on the back. That my question is always going to be: A, do they work when you start using them? B, how long will they work for? And C, who's going to unplug everything and plug it back in again? Which I think is something that we don't always think about. Certainly in the social alarm world, if somebody's switched off, their lines are upgraded. It's not just the fact that the system won't work anymore. It's that someone's got to unplug it, replug it, make sure it works, plug in a router, etc. Which is going to be, you know, an important thing, I think, moving forward. So next question: do you think the time frame to transfer from analog to digital is realistic? That's one that could go to, so certainly from your point of view, Sarah.
It's ambitious, but it's not unrealistic. I think actually this goes back to your previous question as well. It's not like the UK is doing this in isolation. I mean, other countries have done it. I mean, Switzerland is an example. where Swisscom basically just sent the telephones out and they stopped working unless you unplugged it and plugged it. And the only numbers they could dial were emergency services number or the Swisscom provider. So that was a very Swiss approach, which appeared to have been very efficient. I don't think it's an approach we'll take over here. Slightly different setup over here, but also we have Ofcom that wouldn't particularly like that. So it can be done. It's difficult in the UK because there are so many CPs and there's such a complicated structure. And I think just to make it a little bit even more ambitious is when Max said, getting ahead of the switch was the way to do it. I think there's something that really needs to be done over here. So it may be that the CPs may wait until 2024, 2025 to migrate some customers, but it's already happening. There are managed migrations going on, and it may be that telehealthcare users are taken out of those migrations. But I think the sooner the telehealthcare industry gets over there, the better it's going to be for the end customers ultimately. So it's something that 2025 is ambitious, but let's try and get it ahead of there.
Yeah, I think you're right. Max?
Yeah, I just wanted to come in on that. So yeah, thanks, Sarah. I agree, and I think there's possibly two sides to this question. So one is it realistic in terms of the telephone lines all going to digital, but also is it realistic for us as an industry? Will we still be supplying services to as many vulnerable people in 2025 as we are today? And I think the answer to that depends on when we start. So we at CSL have done numerous presentations in the past where we did some very basic maths based on how many installs we believe happens each day at the moment, the size of the market at the moment for telecare in the UK, and how many working days there are in a year. And I think we basically said, and I think sort of what Stuart touched on earlier as well, about an organic switch where you don't have to take stuff out before the end of its working life if you start the switch earlier. So if you stop putting out analog equipment, then the switch almost becomes natural because you're just installing digital equipment where you were installing analog equipment before, and by 2025 you've got no analog equipment left. But the longer we wait to start, the more we're going to have to install. And then the question becomes, do we have the manpower and the resources in the telecare industry to install twice as many units as we install today? Because if we wait too long, then that's the reality, is that we either don't have as many devices out there, or we're having to install at twice the current rate, maybe even more.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the sooner that manufacturers stop manufacturing analog equipment, the better, because it will ultimately force the hand of the service provider to install digital equipment. Richard, you've been doing quite a bit of work in Scotland on the digital switchover. Do you think it's realistic? Do you think we're going to get there?
I won't comment on Scotland because that's a different client. But in England, I think I'll use Sarah's phrase. I think it's challenging. I mean, we've gone out and we've spoken to a wide range of providers, and that there is wide awareness of the need to switch, but a lot of planning is still at a relatively early stage, and people are still trying to figure out what they're going to do to address that. So I think on Max's point, you need to start actually doing something about it. Sooner you start, the sooner that we can start rolling out these alarms. But I think I'm just picking up on one of the points in the chat. Apologies, doing your job for you, Mark. But
feel free.
We do hear again and again that some of the challenges around equipment supply are causing problems. People are ordering kit and either being told they can't buy it or they can buy it, and they've got to wait 3-4 months to get hold of it. So that's certainly not helping, and I think the indication is that that's not going to get massively better too quickly either. So yeah, it's a challenge. Wouldn't want to say that it's not achievable, but it's certainly a challenge.
I think it is, and the supply issue is a really good question, given that we should be on the journey right now, and we should be halfway through our journey, and we're not. Stuart, question for you as a provider: are you seeing supply issues? Are they getting better, worse?
Yeah, we've definitely seen supply issues, and I think aside from the tech industry, you can see serious motor manufacturers shutting down production at the same time. So you know it's not isolated to tech when McDonald's run out of milkshakes and you can't get a chocolate flake in your 99 corner. So there's no doubt about it. You know, supply chain issues compounded by Brexit, COVID, and multiple reasons are definitely affecting the tech industry at the moment. Will it slow down A to D? I don't think so. I think it's moving on at a pace, and I think our challenges are our challenges. I think that the timeline will remain as it is. Is it realistic? I take Max's view. You know, it's realistic until a certain point. I think it's like an aircraft traveling down the runway. It's got to a certain point on the runway where it can still take off safely. But if it passes that point, then it can't reach the sky before it runs out of runway. And the same applies when it comes to churning analog to digital. That I think that, you know, that longest journey does need to start with a single step. Manufacturers do need to stop supplying analog equipment. Every bit of analog equipment that goes out today is just adding to the problem that we've then got to solve. You know, there's no doubt about it. We definitely need to embrace digital now, only spend new money on digital product, and I think start that journey, and let's see where we are in 2023, 2024. I've seen on the chat lots of people talking about budgets, and budgets absolutely are a major consideration. But when someone's designing their digital plan, I urge them not just to look at budget, but also to look at resource. You know, what resource have you got to actually do this churn? If it goes beyond the evolutionary stage and it becomes a revolutionary, i.e. you're actively going out and replacing alarms that are analog with digital, then have you got the resource to be able to do that? Because that definitely needs to be included in your digital plan.
Definitely, and I think that's going to be an important factor for all of us going forward. Next question, or the next few questions actually are for Max, and Max. So Max, question: how robust is the GSM/mobile network in the event of a power outage? Aren't things like masts powered by mains grid? So if there's a power outage, the mast goes down, and will that just stop the mobile signal anyway?
Yeah, so the majority of masts are powered via the mains. The benefit that mobile network has over a static network is that it's diverse geographically. So, for example, where I am today, I will have in every direction from me different masts, especially once you add in roaming SIMs and different networks. I think if I were in a position where a power cut was causing me to lose network, then that would be a massive power outage, you know, possibly even national. And I think at that point we've probably got bigger issues than the mobile network being down. So I think it's not really a concern that we need to be worried about. In more rural areas where there are less masts, they tend to have diesel backup. So again, in those situations there is backup for those masts. But generally, where you will have more than one network mast that will service you, and that will be protected by different areas.
Yeah, and I guess the flip side to that is what else could you use? Because if you're using Wi-Fi, if you're using broadband and you're plugged into a router, if the mains fails, then your broadband fails anyway. It's not like PS10 where it carried on working. So we're almost at the mercy of the service or what the service providers are giving us to a certain extent. So the next question is a bit of a twofold thing. With many manufacturers utilising SIM cards, there's still many areas in the UK where there's no mobile signal at all. So and Dave actually says, well, lobbying for full mobile coverage of 4G is needed, whilst the 5G rollout is progressing. What's your view on the signal coverage in the UK?
Yeah, so signal coverage in the UK is very good. So I think 4G is mentioned in the question, but most devices would fall back to 2G as well. So 2G as an example, all network providers I think would give 99% population coverage. And I think the thing to remember with, again, the benefit of using roaming SIMs and access to all of the networks is that those footprints won't line up directly over each other. I don't have any statistics on exactly what the coverage is, if you think of the way that they will overlay and for example, EE, which is Orange and T-Mobile, is normally stronger in rural areas than Vodafone and O2 in more urban areas. You'll find that actually the coverage is higher than that. And then with 4G, which obviously for the future, I think is around 96 or 97%. And again, overlaid as well. And my understanding is that over time, 4G will end up better than 2G because it has greater penetration.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. I think that's why we've got to look at more than one signalling route. We talked about plugging into a router. We've talked about using Wi-Fi. Do you still see that mobile becomes the primary signal and Wi-Fi or broadband becomes a secondary, or do you see it the other way around?
Yeah, so obviously CSL's sort of backgrounds in fire and security, and the fire and security market has actually gone to mobile as sort of the most common form of signalling because of issues with broadband power supplies and stuff like that. So I do think that mobile will remain the primary, and then there might be fallback to other to other technologies. In our own product, the fire and security product, we install over 100,000 a year, and I think less than sort of 0.5% have signal issues. And that tends to be an installation issue rather than that there is no signal available at all. It's been mentioned in the chat about outdoor and indoor. But one of the things that I would recommend is an external aerial. So one of the differences from PSTN obviously is that we're able to install the unit in the best place now. And that might include an external aerial, which will boost signal as well if there are issues with particular properties and stuff like that.
Yeah, so there's other things we need to consider, and I guess the other thing that we don't always talk about in the digital world using SIMs is the installation process. Typically, with a dispersed alarm, you take it, you plug it in, you switch it on, and it works. In the SIM world, you end up with a signal strength meter, looking at the property, seeing what the best solution is and the best place to put it. So, Richard Bailey.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think this is one of the issues about confidence in the new technology. I was talking about Wakefield earlier on, but I've got a slide on a different presentation. In October of this year, the BT exchange at Wakefield caught fire, and it's the second fire that they'd had in 12 months. It left 4,000 properties affected, with I think about 300 telecare connections were lost. And as of last week, they'd still got some lines down in certain areas. So, it's not as if there isn't already problems with our industry, because we're relying on a device that plugs into an analog phone line with a life safety critical or life critical piece of equipment that you're actually only testing. If it is tested, it might do an automatic test call every 28 days. So if that device makes that successful call, somebody could just unplug that unit from the phone line and nobody would know that device was offline for up to 28 days until they tried to press the pendant. I think one of the benefits of using like cloud-based technology is that if that device loses connection, somebody will receive an email to say that device is not working. And we've got a very short period of time now where somebody can actually follow up on that and see what the problem is. So we've got a lot more reporting and knowledge and understanding of what is going on with the status of those devices, which I think is very important.
I think that's a really important point. Stuart, you had a hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I think it was supplementing the question that was asked of Max with regards to, if SIM-based connectivity was going to be the preferred way that we connect our dispersed alarms to our ARCs. And it's just one of the big advantages of digital, when Richard was asked a question earlier on about what extra services will digital bring. And I think it's not just the extra services that digital will bring, it's how we can transform our existing services to do more for less, to be more efficient, and the SIM card plays a big part in that. If you just take the question about how are we going to install, twice as many dispersed alarms between now and 2025 as we try and churn from analog to digital? If we carry on needing a person getting in a car, carrying a product to someone's house, plugging into either a telephone line or a router, if it plugs into a router, then the installation can become quite complex. And of course, the unit is then tethered to that router. What we need to do is we need to simplify that in order to be able to do more for less. And SIM cards give us that opportunity. If the unit is completely SIM based and you can send it out in the post, you can send it home with someone as they come home from hospital. You can have contact-free installations, which have proved highly advantageous over COVID. But just as in hopefully a post-COVID world, we can start to see that installations will be much less labor intensive and complex if we can just literally give somebody a box, say plug it in, it lights up, and then we program it via cloud. And all of that is only possible if we're using 2G, not 2G, sorry, SIM-based technology, 2G, 4G, or anything else that's SIM-based.
I think you make a really good point there. We've talked a lot about the installations and how many installations we need to carry out and how much labour is going to be involved in that. And actually the fact that, as you quite rightly say, with a SIM-based unit, you can plug it in, switch it on, and that's that. You don't even plug it into a PSTN line. It's going to make a difference. And I think that's one of the things we need to consider when we're thinking about the technology and moving forward and what that looks like. I completely agree. So I've got another question here. Communication providers must supply battery backup units for FTTP cabinets installed within the home of vulnerable adults to ensure an uninterrupted power supply and continuous access to emergency services. Can this be extended beyond 1 hour? So quickly, the answer is that certainly the CPs won't extend it beyond 1 hour. That's what Ofcom have told them, and that's all they're ever going to supply. But going back to what we've already said, is a dispersed alarm with a SIM in it and a 24-hour battery will work for 24 hours in the event of a power failure. I'm pretty sure everybody's dispersed alarm is the same. So Richard Bailey, 24 hours?
48, yes.
Okay,
over 24 hours.
And in our case, up to 7 days, because it just doesn't use power like analog units use power. So yeah, the battery life is really extended when it comes to a digital unit. But again, Mark, your point's absolutely right. You do need that SIM-based backup in order for that to it not to be power dependent.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, have you got a view on this?
I do. So the requirements on CPs are actually to maintain access to 999 calls, and Ofcom requires them to provide what they call a resilient solution. And it may be that resilient solution is a battery backup unit, or it may be that resilient solution is a mobile phone. I think it would be a little bit unfair on saying that vulnerable people can't use a mobile phone, because sometimes that is the best solution for them, and that's for CPs to work out with their end customer. But if they do require something, if they don't want to use a mobile phone or they don't have the coverage, then the logical solution would be a battery backup unit. And it's Ofcom's requirements, and it's for 1 hour. It maybe it goes beyond that. But that's, I guess, there's a lot of talk about how it is always going to be a battery backup unit. And in some cases, that isn't the appropriate solution because it may be mobile.
Yeah, and in some cases, as I understand, as you said quite clearly, that the Ofcom is for 999 services, so that RCPs that will provide a battery-backed unit that will only dial 39s. So it won't necessarily dial a normal telephone number. So if I'm talking about putting that into a standard PSTN type dispersed alarm, then it won't work anyway in a battery environment.
Okay, that may be.
Jerry. Sorry. Jerry has a hand up.
I do, thank you. So, question to the suppliers, but also to Michael as well. So we talked about central government involvement in this, and what I think we could do to raise the profile of this within central government is actually to look at the all-party parliamentary group finding some champions to move that forward for a finite amount of time. To actually raise this to another level. Would suppliers, do you think, be interested, because obviously these things need funding to bring it together? And first of all, and secondly, to Michael, do you think an APPG is a vehicle that would help us? Because we don't really want to look at the challenges of the transformation, but what we want to look at, what the opportunities are for cost savings and widening services and people's quality of life on the back of digital. Is that something the suppliers be interested in working with us to develop?
I think all the suppliers will be interested in working to get to raise the profile to central government.
Yep.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
I think it all comes down to the business case. I mean, the broad brush answer is absolutely yes. We need to raise the profile, and we need to get the funding for the space, because that's what's needed. But what we'd need to do is put down a plan as what this additional funding would achieve to who. And I think most importantly, I think in the chat there's also a call to action when it comes to stories, good news stories, and the good work that the tech industry does, because that's making the business case to central government to say this is what we do, and this is what would be missing if we weren't doing it, because it would all go across the blue lights, and you don't really want that. So I think there's a business case to be made for both, but certainly from a Legrand Care perspective, we'd be happy to be involved.
Yeah, I think so. I think Jerry kind of directed the question to Michael as well. Do you see your involvement in that?
Thanks, Mark. My sort of focus is sort of firmly on the work that we are doing now in terms of the research, and then what does that mean in terms of issues that sort of need to be worked through and to improve awareness. I mean, I'm only one part of government, of course, and DCMS are the sort of flag bearers for sort of the sort of switch over. So it's probably more a question for them, but I think I see the next 3 or 4 months really is crucial in terms of trying to work through some of the issues that have been reinforced by the study, and taking things forward from there. But I think that what sort of we're thinking in the meantime is sort of guidance for local authorities in terms of the types of things that sort of Richard Parkinson was talking about in terms of the presentation, about what do they need to be thinking of now, and moving forward. A very small number have. I'm sort of thinking of areas like Wirral who have done their audit. They've sort of announced their plans for the future and their sort of funding for that, and I think it's about focusing on these issues, about what needs to be done in each area, what in terms of does the equipment that a local authority has either purchased or is using, does that work in the switchover? What are the costs there? What's the sort of thinking to the future solution? I think all of that needs to be gone through before there's a sort of a blanket, request to sort of central government to sort of fund services going forward.
Yeah, and I guess we'd involve Openreach too. I mean, they have a vested interest in making this work as well. So I think it's something that I think you're right, Jerry. It's something that if we pull together and there's a combined voice, we've got more chance of at least somebody hearing it. Yeah, completely agree. Is there any more questions, guys, before we questions, comments from the panel before we wrap up? So one last question that there's currently a situation happening as we speak due to the recent storm where there are hundreds of houses without electricity since Friday. The houses that have digital lines of no communication means, as the mobile network is so poor in these areas. This is an area of concern for the tech sector. Does this need to be explored before the switchover? And is that an area that NHSX could put on their radar to investigate? I guess it's kind of covered with the conversations that we've had earlier on about coverage and about, you know, how we manage that and how the coverage actually is in the hands of the service is in the hands of the CPs. I think it's the mobile coverage is always going to be an issue, but as Richard mentioned earlier on, PSTN has exactly the same problem. Certainly in snow, PSTN can fail across a wide area as well. I don't know if there's any other comments from the panel before we finish. Okay, well, thank you very much to all of our panelists. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much to everybody who's dialed in and listening. I'm now going to hand over to Jerry or Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you for that. And thank you all the panelists again. It's really good that we've managed today to actually look at a different aspect of the challenges and opportunities for the switchover from purely technical to looking at the policy and the strategies around going forward. So I really appreciate that. And I hope the delegates found it useful. Certainly lots of questions coming in. So thank you for that. We have, we will obviously continue to cover this subject in future events. We've run 14 events since January, and I'd hope this is our last event for 2021, and I hope the delegates have found it useful. We have already started planning for 2022. So our first event is on the 18th of January 2022, where we will be looking at training and education. And then on the 1st of February, we'll be looking at the tech's relationship with the blue light services. And then in March 2022, on the 15th of March, we will be having our first live event since 2019. And this is going to be very much around where we are with the digital switchover, but also there'll be the innovation zone with probably over 40 suppliers. We will have an all IP zone, and we're hoping that Sarah, Michael, and Richard will be involved with us as well. And then we will have a training and education zone. The event is being sponsored by Mole Valley Life in Surrey, and we're very grateful for them for providing the venue at Dorking Halls. All the information for that is on the website, and more information about the programs will come before the end of the year. If you're a supply member on the call today and you haven't signed up for your stand yet, please do that. Stands are free to all our supply members. If you're not a member but you're interested in presenting or having a stand to the event, please contact me. So we look forward to everything we're planning for the new year, and I'd like to wish you a happy Christmas, because this is our last event. I'm sure I'll be speaking to some of you in the meantime. Thank you very much again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you. Bye.